Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We have all been in this situation before. You attend a conference, read an interesting book or article, and you discover a wonderful new idea. One that you think will be absolutely essential to implement in your organization. But when trying to convince your colleagues, you run into a brick wall, and you struggle to convince them to implement the necessary changes. Suddenly, and contrary to your expectations, you find that those introducing change are not always welcomed with open arms. Fortunately, Linda Rising wrote a book that offers proven change management strategies to help you become a more successful agent of change in your organization. The patterns in this book teach you how to plant effective seeds of change and what forces in your organization drive or block change. So join in and watch how the heroes of this theatrical performance go through their struggle, showing you some of the patterns that are discussed in this book.
Hey, I've just been to this great conference about this new thing called Agile Development.
Cool, new stuff. Sign me up.
Wait, no overacting. You're just an innovator.
Here we see the seed of change. This is a discussion between an evangelist and an innovator. An evangelist is someone who has an idea and is very passionate about it. This passion is an absolute requirement in order to change anything. Many people will resist change, so without passion, you will not be able to keep going when the going gets tough. An innovator is a person who likes new ideas. They always are among the first to try out new things. These people are very convenient to get you going and to try out your new idea. But remember, they are easily distracted by other shiny new ideas, so they might not stay with you for very long.
I was thinking that maybe I could hold the brown bag at lunch and to see if the rest of the team would like to experiment with Agile.
Yeah, cool. Brown bag at lunchtime. Yeah, cool. Let's have cookies. That will keep people motivated. Or even better, we have our regular tech meetings and they're always looking for speakers. And they bring the food.
What a great idea. You know what? I think I'll stop by Pat's office later. You know, as a respected guru, her opinion matters a lot in this company, so if she's with me, I've got it made.
Great idea, but be careful, don't overwhelm her. How are you going to convince her? She's a critic with new stuff.
You make a good point. You know what? I've brought these articles at the convention that I was, and I've also bought this new book. I'll bring these to the brown bag, and you know what? I can even make some copies of those articles to hand out to people who show some interest.
Yeah, just be careful. Don't, you know how those hard veterans are, soft on the inside, and don't overwhelm the people at the brown bag. It's hard enough to keep up with all this new stuff.
Good point. I don't want to overwhelm people and turn them off. You know, maybe before I talk too much, maybe I should try out some of these agile development techniques myself. Would you like to try pair programming with me?
Oh, cool, pair programming. What is that? I don't mind. I've no deadline, so yeah, we can do that. When do we start?
Let's start right now. Thanks.
In this conversation, many patterns can be found that the evangelist and the innovator are suggesting to use to introduce their new idea to the rest of the organization. First of all, the brown bag pattern. A brown bag is a get-together during lunch. In the US, lunches are often brought from home in a brown bag. This pattern suggests to use the time when people normally eat their lunch to provide a convenient and relaxed setting for hearing about the new idea. A second food-related pattern is do food, turning an ordinary gathering into a special event by including food. It is hardwired into our brains to be more receptive to people who share food with us. So bringing cookies is always a good idea if you want someone to listen to you, especially if you went the extra mile and baked them yourself. When discussing the food, the innovator suggests the piggyback pattern by using an already existing meeting. This lowers the hurdle for people to show up, as they will already be attending the meeting anyway, since it is part of an ongoing series. Then the evangelist suggests enlisting the support of a senior level person. This is known as the guru on your side pattern. If you can convince people who are well respected in the organization, other people are more likely to listen to you as well. Bringing books and articles gives external validation to the idea. It shows that the new idea has already worked for other people and that several people have already tried it. As the innovator mentions, it's easy to overwhelm people who are new to an idea, so make sure to only give a brief introduction and then provide more information when people are ready for it. This is known as the just enough pattern. When people are curious about your new idea, they will come and ask you for more information, and that will be the perfect time to provide them with more. Finally, the evangelist suggests to just do it. It will help to spread the word about the new idea to use it in your own work so you can discover the benefits and limitations. Having tried something also helps you prove your case. You can then point out that it helped you to succeed. And the innovator confirms that now is actually the right time. There are no important deadlines coming up that add too much pressure to try something new. Make sure you always consider the timing when you schedule events or when you ask others for help. If you choose the wrong time, people will not be susceptible to the new idea and you might not get a second chance.
I think I sparked some interest at the brown bag. I wonder what I should do next. I know, I could talk to some people who showed some interest. Hi Pat, I saw you were at the brown bag. I was going to drop by your office later to see if you have any questions.
Yeah, I was at the brown bag. It was quite interesting, but I still have some questions that, can you tell me about them some more?
Sure.
Different people accept new ideas at different rates. There are 5 different roles that people can have. The first group to accept a new idea are the innovators. This is a relatively small group, usually about 2.5% of the population. These people take little persuasion, but are also easily distracted by newer ideas. The next group are the early adopters, usually about 13 to 14% of the population. They will still accept changes easily, but will only accept them after serious consideration. The third group are the early majority, about 34% of the total population. They're usually followers who look to the people in the early adopters group that they trust. They will only accept a change after they feel it has been proven to work. The fourth group is the late majority. This group also makes up about 34% of any population. This group is composed of people who approach new ideas with skepticism and caution. They usually need some kind of pressure before they accept a new idea, such as seeing people all around them using it, or a boss who strongly urges them to use it. The final group are the laggards, about 16% of the population in an organization. They are the last people to adopt new ideas when they accept them at all. Their view is typically, we've always done it this way. Mind you that these percentages are determined statistically, so they might differ widely from organization to organization. Also keep in mind that these are roles, not people. People can be a laggard in one context and still be an innovator in another context. Many people who like to do their work the way they've always done it still like to always have the latest iPad.
So, I've talked to an innovator and I've talked to a guru. What I need now is a real project to try these things. Hi Chris, I hear you're working on the Ventures project and I saw you were at the brown bag. Do you think your project might be a good idea to try these agile development techniques?
Yeah, I did attend brown bag and it sounded really interesting, but I'm not so sure to jump in feet first.
I see you have a lot of concerns, but maybe we could just try it for a short while and then we can evaluate afterwards, and if you don't like how things are going, we can always go back to the way we've worked before. I'll help you see things through and we'll evaluate things as we go along.
I don't know, it sounds interesting. I'm not sure.
It's just an experiment, say 4 months?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, but only if you help us.
Sure, thanks.
The first pattern we just saw was personal touch. To convince people of the value in a new idea, show how it can be personally useful and valuable to them. In the case that you don't actually have anything to show them yet, and people are a bit hesitant to adopt a change, you can combine this pattern with the trial run pattern. It's much more effective to let people convince themselves, and by selling the change as a trial run, where even failure is a positive outcome that can be learned from, it will become much easier to sell the idea. And the good thing is that when people have actually started doing something for a while, it becomes much easier to keep going, as it will be yet another change to change back. Make sure you are specific about the time and what will be done during this period, otherwise people might give up too soon.
I think I've convinced people to try this agile thing. You know, that goes for a celebration. I think I should organize a lunch to keep people interested in the ventures experiment. Let's see. Actually, I've got so many people interested, I can't keep up with them anymore. Maybe I should set up an electronic forum or something. Gee, with all this excitement, I'm starting to talk to myself.
Hey, I hear you're trying to sell something called Agile Development. Can you tell me a bit more about it?
Thanks for your interest. You know a lot of people in this company. Can you help me spread the word?
Sure, I'd like to help. And yeah, I do know a lot of people, like I'm part of the Historical Society, the Java community, and Dushes, so yeah.
Thanks.
Sure, it's a great idea, but I want to know a bit more. Let's check with a few others or could you point me to some resources?
Yeah, sure. You know what? I bet you're not the only one who wants to learn more. Maybe you could help me set up a study group.
Sure, yeah. I know some people. I can see when we can meet.
Great, thanks.
In this conversation we see yet another role, the connector. A connector is a person who has many connections with other people in the organization. Everybody knows them and they know everybody. It is a good idea to ask these people for help, as they can quickly bring you into contact with a lot of other people you might not have connections with yourself. Asking for help is a pattern in and of itself. Since the task of introducing a new idea into an organization is a big job, look for people and resources to help your efforts. Letting people help you also makes them feel more involved and more likely to put more effort into making the change happen. The third pattern in this conversation is just say thanks. People like to feel appreciated, so show your appreciation to them by saying thanks in the most sincere way you can. The final pattern in this conversation is the study group. When there is not a lot of money for formal training, you can just find a few motivated people and study the subject together. Doing something together often motivates people to keep going when the going gets tough, and it usually also helps to share your findings. Where one person might get stuck, the insights of another can often help you past the stumbling point.
Hey Chris, I talked to your friend Pat about agile development, and she's been asking me a lot of good questions, but she's still very skeptical. I think it would be a good idea if we convince her of the value of this new idea, because, well, her being a respected guru, her opinion carries a lot of weight in this organization. Do you think you could talk to her about the value you've seen in agile development on the Ventures project?
Yeah, of course. I can go to Pat and meet her in her office and talk about the Ventures project and the success we have had with agile development and everything.
Thanks.
When some people resist a change where others have accepted it, you might use the bridge builder pattern. Pair the person who resists with the person that they trust that has accepted the change to discuss what the advantages and disadvantages of the change are. This way, the person who resists is more likely to accept the change.
Hey, I hear great things about the Ventures project. What's the scoop?
Great news! The first iteration is finished and the customer is happy.
Oh, cool. I bet you called another meeting to talk about your success and talk about your progress. A lot of folks would show up if you would call a meeting and share it with you.
Great idea. It wouldn't even have to be a formal thing. I mean, just to let the group talk about the success they've been having. You know what? I think I'll schedule that for next week. Thanks for the idea. Oh, and you know what? One of the guys on the team made these buttons that we can hand out.
Really cool. What does it say?
I am an agile addict.
The first pattern that is shown in this conversation is the hometown story. In order to help people see the usefulness of the new idea, encourage the people in the organization who have had success with it to share their stories. This works because one of the most common reactions to change, even when it is something that has been proven to work in many organizations, is, "Oh, but that won't work for us." So when you can prove that it actually works for your specific organization, your co-workers are much more likely to accept the change. The second pattern is a token, handing out a small something to remind people of the new idea, even if it is as small as a button, helps to keep the idea alive. People may be enthusiastic about a topic when they first hear about it, but the enthusiasm quickly wanes as they forget tomorrow what excited them today.
Wow, that was a great event. People got so excited that we're going to meet up regularly. One of the guys from the team could even get t-shirts for cheap.
Oh, sounds exciting.
Yeah, and the really great news is, I got an email from Linda Rising. You know, I met her at the conference. She said she's coming to town on business, and she's offered to speak to our user group. And if she gets us an early flight, we can even get some people together for dinner before the talk. And if we hold it all in a new conference center, that would even make it more special.
I'd be there, and good to advertise something like that. I could make some posters and put them up in the cafeteria.
Ooh, good idea. We really should do more publicity more regularly about our user group events and other meetings.
Oops. The pattern that is talked about in this conversation is the Big Jolt Pattern. To provide more visibility for the change effort, you can invite a high-profile person into your organization to talk about the new idea. A well-known speaker can get people to listen who wouldn't listen to just anybody from their own organization.
Gee, my manager said she'd be here at 11. I wonder where she is.
Hi, I stopped by to hear about the great work you've been doing. And some real success with our new customer, this Ventures project. It's something called Agile Development. What's that about?
Thanks for your interest. Remember that conference I attended last fall? I met some really great people there, and I've been talking about it ever since.
Well, your hard work hasn't been gone unnoticed. I think that it's time the upper management hears about it. What about... maybe you can give a short overview at the Vice President's meeting next Tuesday.
Wow, the Vice President? Thanks for your confidence. I'll make sure to put something together. Holy moly, VP, I'd better get something great ready for Tuesday.
Here you see the local sponsor pattern at work. First level management has gotten wind of this new idea and of the success that the company is having because of it. When your boss supports the tasks you are doing, you can be even more effective. They can get you the resources you need to spread your idea even further.
Hey, I heard you had a Vice President meeting yesterday. How did it go?
Great, I think. The VP and the staff are going to call in their respective guru to evaluate agile development. And I'm going to present some brown bags about the topics, and they're going to report back to the VP and the staff.
Oh, that sounds interesting and great. It sounds like the company is ready to move on this. Can anyone come to those meetings?
I didn't think of that. Let me check. That's a great idea. That would give me some wider reach in the company and also give me some moral support because I'm not an expert on this.
Beyond the local sponsor is the corporate angel. To align the innovation with the goals of the organization, you need to get the support from a high-level executive. So try to enlist the support of an upper manager who has a special interest in the new idea and who can provide direction and the resources to support it.
This is too much. I just can't take it anymore. I'm getting so discouraged. These VPs at the meetings are so critical. It's like they don't want to hear anything new.
Give it easy sailing to up to this point. It's good to get some negativity. You shouldn't get too much over into your head. You will think that you have magic powers. But seriously, see it as some feedback, not just on what you're trying to teach them, but how you present things and how you can use agile development, and in the end run, it will be better for our company.
I know what you're saying, but it sure is hard to put into practice.
What about that famous person like Linda Rising? Any help there?
You know, that's a good idea. And actually, there's also an agile listserv that I could sign up for. I bet there are lots of people out there who could talk me through this. Therapy online.
Whenever you become disheartened, find a shoulder to cry on. That doesn't mean you literally have to cry, but finding a person you can talk to who will listen to your woes and will help you out with good suggestions is invaluable. In this conversation, the early adopter even comes up with the idea of the fear less pattern. This pattern tries to address the problem that any change is disruptive, so it is bound to run into resistance. This pattern tells you to use the critics and ask them for help. Listen to what they have to say. There is always at least a grain of truth in there, and usually quite a bit more than that even. So listen carefully and ask them for their input on how to address the problems they're seeing.
You look happy. How are those evaluations going?
Incredible. And the upshot is, we're going to try more projects and get mentoring and training.
All right.
And better yet, my manager is giving me 4 hours a week to work on this.
Cool. You deserved it. You have been working months for it. You worked hard for it. Several months already, and almost a year now.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going back to DevOps next week to talk about our take on test-driven development.
In order to become truly effective as a change advocate, the work should become part of your job description. In other words, you have to become a dedicated champion. This way, nobody will begrudge you the time introducing your new idea takes away from your official work.
What about those skeptical gurus? How did that work out?
Well, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is you were right. I tried to listen, and sometimes listening is enough. I've tried to keep an open mind and to learn from what they were from all those experienced people were saying, and I think all our project plans got better from that.
Excellent. But what about the bad news?
Well, you know, some people just like poking holes into things. But I thought, hey, live and let live, so now that's their role.
Their role? Poking holes?
Exactly. I've made it their job to listen through the meeting and find everything that is wrong with what we're suggesting. So now they're quiet all through the early part of the meeting, and you can really hear those wheels turning. And then at the end, they want to make sure they point out every stumbling block and possible risk. And you know what? It really helps. We need people with this role.
So everybody lives happily ever after?
Of course not. Last week, one of the VP staff caught me in the cafeteria and really gave me an earful. But I told him that I would be happy to answer any questions he had in private, and you know, he's not been very supportive so far. Not really resistant, but sitting on a fence. So I told him that I would meet him, and he suggested 7 a.m. on Friday. But I was there, and we talked for about 20 minutes. You know, he's just like everybody else, afraid of change. So, and he didn't want to answer any question or ask questions in front of everybody else, and you know. So we talked for about 20 minutes, and I answered all these questions. And you know what? I'm going to keep everything confidential. I really think this is the best thing.
When one of the resistors to your idea is a strong opinion leader, consider making them a champion skeptic. They will tell you everything that is wrong with your ideas anyway, so you might as well involve them by making it their job to spot all the flaws. Even when they don't change their minds, this will still make your idea better. When one of the resistors is a manager, it might help to use the whisper in the general's ear pattern. Managers are sometimes hard to convince in a group setting, so it might help to meet them in private to address any concerns they have, without them having to lose face over having to ask questions in front of others.
Stop.
When one of the resistors is a manager, it might help to use the whisper in the general's When one of the resistors is a manager, it might help to use the whisper in the general's ear pattern. Managers are sometimes hard to convince in a group setting, so it might help to meet them in private to address any concerns they have, without them having to lose face over having to ask questions in front of others.
Thanks for the insight. You learned a lot this past year. Do you know, you should write something about it to help others who have the same problems.
You know, I was thinking of going to Devox and giving a presentation on introducing agile change into organizations.
I think it's more than agile introduction. I think it's patterns to introduce change anywhere in an organization, any change.
Patterns, what a cool idea. But I can't do it without you. Will you help me write them?
I'll be there.
Cool.
So, any questions? It's a different approach, but...
What's the real time span for introducing changes from your experience? Is it really a year, or do we have to have more patience? Because, you know, I read the book, and my first impression is that I could get through the patterns within a week, but it's not like that, right? So what's the real time span?
So the question is, what is the real time span of introducing a change? And my answer is that I think it really depends on what kind of a change do you want. Do you just want to introduce pair programming? Then yes, sure, you can probably get at least some of the people doing that within a week. But before you get the entire organization doing that, that might take years. And especially if you want to introduce all of Agile, that'll definitely take years. Because it's easy to get some people to do something, but if you want to scale up to the entire organization, that becomes a lot harder, because usually you only have very few interactions with everybody else. And to get change working, you really have to keep in touch and make sure you reach out and keep poking people and keep asking for help. And it takes a lot of effort.
And it also depends on the size of your company.
True.
Is it a few people or a few hundred people or maybe even more? So, and it depends on how many management layers you have to poke through and everything. So, more questions? We still have plenty of time.
One more question from me. So what did you find the most sensible way of keeping in touch with other people in regard to a change? Because I know that some people don't like to be pushed, or I don't know, being regularly. They may find it, I don't know, disruptive or offensive in a way. So what's from your experience, what's the way to keep in touch in a sensible way?
Well, the question is how to keep in touch with other people, because they might not like being pushed. Well, I think one good way is talk to people at the coffee machine. Ask how they're doing, what are they feeling, especially meet them in where they are. Like Dan North said, go to them, ask them, how can I help you? How can I make things better for you? Do I have to poke some manager because he's getting in your way? Or is it just too hard? Or try and be helpful without nagging, because nagging never helps.
And yeah, it differs per person, of course. Some people like to get regular emails, some people like the meetups, and
so try and use as many possible ways as you can to reach everybody.
If your kind of population of laggards is much higher than other places, would you approach it differently? Would you take a slightly different, use different techniques for profiles of who you're dealing with?
So the question is, if you have a higher percentage of laggards, would you need different ways to introduce change? Yes, probably. And maybe if you're really passionate about getting a change and you're not getting it because, well, most of the people are laggards, then it might be time to get out and go somewhere else where you can change things.
Yes.
How do you deal with concurrent change? So let's say you have a lot of evangelists who have different topics. Okay, they want to introduce stuff at the same time. So you have one who wants to do lean because he was at the right conference. Then the other guy wants to introduce whatever other process model that is currently popular in this industry, and you have those two competing basically for the same resources, wanting the same projects to volunteer as pilots for their process.
That is a really cool question. So the question is, how do you deal with concurrent evangelists who all want to push their idea? Well, the thing is, I would probably be one of the evangelists in such a case. And I would probably just go and talk to the other evangelists, see if you can line up your ideas and if you can work together. Because that's probably a better idea than competing, because then nothing will happen. So that would probably, and if you're not the evangelist, you might want to go and talk to those evangelists and tell them, hey, you know, there are several people competing here, maybe you should talk to each other. Or even just invite them both to coffee or whatever. Having coffee or tea or whatever is always a good idea to get people to pay attention, because it's part of the do food.
Yeah, and a lot of things have a different name, but in essence are the same. Like lean and agile development don't differ that much. So yeah, it's called differently, but the approaches are almost the same. So most likely they will get a common path and look what's best for the company. That's most important.
Do you find there's a difference between, if you're talking about lean or agile, it's very kind of people specific, so the changes, there's potentially less resources involved in terms of money maybe or hardware or something like that. Is there a difference between, you know, that type of change and how you might approach something if you needed new hardware or a special type of server or something like that?
So the question is there a difference between things you want to change that concern people, like agile or lean, and changes you want that require money, like servers or hardware? Yeah, probably, but most of the time the problems you're having are still people related, because even if you want servers or hardware, there's probably a manager involved who has to grant you that budget. So it's still a person problem. You'll have to convince that manager. So,
And maybe the time is different. You take a lot longer time in a certain certain thing to do to convince somebody because of that. But you're right, it's the same.
but
Same things help.
when money is involved, it usually helps to show them how it hurts them that you don't have a faster server. I once had a laptop, or no, it was a PC, and it crashed 4 times a day, which was bad enough, but after crashing, it took me half an hour to get back to where I was. Not just mentally, but hardware-wise. It took me that long to start up all my processes again. So in the end, I ended up calling the help desk saying, you know, my computer crashes a lot and it takes a long time. And their first response was, well, just get a coffee. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm external here, so this takes 2 hours of my day. I'm happy with drinking coffee for 2 hours a day, but I'm guessing you're not.
I think I saw another question.
Do you have any story you can share about acquiring an external validation of your ideas?
Do we have any stories about acquiring external validation? Well, there are books, articles, things you hear at conferences. Sometimes, especially concerning Agile, you can usually find somebody who is willing to speak for free in the evening to a group of people.
And we are both consultants. We work for the same firm. And sometimes we talk to other colleagues and each other and ask, are we doing the right thing and how would you do that? So that's also how we get our validation from outside a company, or outside the project we're working on.
May I add one question? Sometimes you don't get evangelists in your company, but you can hire them and invite them, and they will help. Sometimes you get yourself in a position where you're an innovator or frontline. They have an idea, but you're not an evangelist, you don't do that. You can hire them or look around and see if there are other people which are evangelist type, just give them the idea and they will help.
So the comment was that maybe you can hire an evangelist, and well, for Agile you can get Agile coaches, and that might or might not work. But I think that being an evangelist is really something from inside. You have to want that change, because it will take a lot of work, and you have to be passionate enough about it to do that. And if you're not passionate enough, I don't think hiring somebody else will help.
Yeah, sometimes. Because sometimes we need an initial push in the organization and then
Yeah, but somebody needs to have that dedication to, well, at least get that Agile coach in, because you know you need training. But I still don't think that the coach is the actual evangelist. I think the person getting in the coach needs to be the evangelist, because they have to be the bridge between that hired person who is external and will definitely get a lot of friction from within the company, because he's outside of the company. He doesn't know what we're like. So you really need somebody inside who knows how things work with the passion to change things. And you can get help, of course, but...
Question in the same direction. So what do you think about the evangelist being an external, like you said here? I think it's rather difficult to be an evangelist then, right?
Yeah, if you're external, it's a lot harder to be the evangelist, because, well, unless you've been there for quite a while, because I'm a consultant, so I'm always external to companies, but I also do a lot of long-term projects. Right now I've been at my customer for 2 years. So you'd sort of lose that external status if you're there long enough. And if you're not there long enough, well, then you'll have a lot harder battle. And you're really going to have to really go out and talk to these people and involve them in the change and show them why it's useful to them, and use all of these patterns, and you'll need all of them because it's harder.
Maybe it's a good idea to pair up very early with an internal,
Yeah?
to make him have it.
Yeah, you need to pair up with somebody internal if you're external, to get and coach them into how to bring stuff, and then they will become the evangelist. So yeah, hiring somebody external, you always need to coach somebody internal, because what Linda's saying, it won't work if they will still be clashing.
And I really love... Did you all attend the keynote with the story from Dan North about the really ego programmer who didn't want to do pair programming because he was better anyway? And then how he asked questions, hey, can you help me? And then in the end got a question back. That's a great technique. I really love that story.
There was a question of that.
How do you manage change without chaos breaking out? Baby steps. Yeah, baby steps. Take small steps. Evaluate stuff as you go along. Try one thing at a time, and then afterwards look back and say, hey, was this a good idea or should we change it? Again, it depends on the kind of change. For things like pair programming, that takes a lot of time to really learn how things work. So that would definitely take a couple of months to try out. But for other things like You know, if you're already trying Scrum and you have this Scrum board and you don't like the columns that are there, then you can simply take one sprint of like 2 weeks to try something new. So you really have to think a bit of how long something might take to try.
And don't be scared to fail. Because, yeah, failure also is an option.
You're doing experiments, so things are bound to fail. A lot of them will fail, and that's a good thing, because it means you'll learn something.
I'm not scared to fail.
Good.
Now, but your company might be.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, you want to change, and it will be a big, what you say, free for all. And just try to do it first in a smaller group, maybe. So do one project team that is going to do the agile, and do small, start small, and just see how it goes, and maybe then you can do bigger steps. If people are saying, oh great, and then more teams, and if people see that it's working, and even the management finds out what we also had in the play, then you will notice that it's going to work faster and faster, and then you get more adaptation into the company when they see the results of you doing it that way. At my current project, we found that out. We started doing agile, and at first they got a product and it wasn't what they wanted, and it took a long time. And because we started doing agile, we asked them to come every 2 weeks, and they started to see that we were really listening to them, and they got the product that they wanted. So they found out, okay, so if we want this, we have to do our thing as well, and be there more regularly, and speak to them, and be open when they have questions for us. And so now it's going further into the company, and that's good. You have a question?
So say that you have a really good idea, but then it fails, and how would you deal with people who are skeptic about your failure?
So you have a really good idea, but it fails, and how are you going to deal with the skeptics about doing that? I think you have to explain what you've learned. You always learn something, even from failure. And think about what did go wrong, and why did it go wrong. And then you can convince even the skeptics that, yeah, I tried it, and yes, I failed, but I even learned something about it, and it's not a complete waste of time, because, okay, we tried this is not working for us, and that's because of this and this. So we can try something else. And then the idea also gets changed, and it's still a great idea.
How would you deal with a suspicion that might arise that what you are really aiming at with introducing a change is not the good of the team, but the crown of the dedicated champion?
One thing you might try is giving up your idea to somebody else.
Yeah, so the question was, what are you going to do if the suspicion arises if you're doing something not for the good of the team, but for your own ego?
So sometimes, for example, a manager might want to take credit for your idea. And if you're really interested in the change and not in the laurels, then let the manager have the credit, because that will probably mean it will go further into the company. And that's hard. It's really hard to let go of your baby and let somebody else steal it.
And yet sometimes it happens that they think that you're doing it for... But the people that are asking you about that, and or you're noticing that there are people that are having that feeling, go talk to them. Invite them for a coffee or lunch, and talk to them and tell them what your ideas are, and address their concerns, but on a one-to-one basis. Don't confront them, because then they will just say, oh, you're out to get me.
And I think the best advice is to listen. Listen to what people say, and that's hard too, because you're bubbling with this new idea and you want to get it out, and suddenly here are people trying to cram stuff back in.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
We will be still around, and we'll be outside. So
So thank you for your attention and
Thank
have
you.
fun at the rest of the conference.